It was a quiet Tuesday evening when Rachel Jennings, a simple reporter from Ridgebrook, stumbled upon a secret that would turn her world upside down. As she followed the mysterious woman named Grace through the dense woods, Rachel thought she was simply witnessing a strange moment. But what she saw next shattered everything she believed. Grace wasn't human. Her skin rippled like something alive beneath the surface, and Rachel's heart skipped a beat. She had just uncovered a truth so dangerous, it could unravel the very fabric of reality. Grace was hiding from something, someone, and Rachel had unknowingly become part of chase that would threaten them both. What was Grace running from? And why was Rachel the key to stopping it? The clock was ticking, and there was no turning back now. Before we start, please subscribe to the channel by clicking the card button on the top right corner and hitting the notification bell so you could get amazing daily stories as and when published. Please do comment your views about the story or any topic that you want to get a story on. We will make it happen. Let's dive in the story. It was a cold, gray evening when Grace Wilder first stepped into the small town of Ridgebrook. The streets were quiet, and the usual hum of the city seemed distant, as if the world had forgotten about this tiny corner of the world. There was an eerie stillness in the air, the kind that made the hairs on the back of your neck stand up. Grace, however, didn't seem to notice the unusual calm. She walked with purpose, her black boots clicking sharply against the cobblestone streets as she made her way toward the diner. Inside, the usual group of locals sat scattered across the room, enjoying their evening meals. A few whispered among themselves, the clink of silverware and the sizzle from the kitchen the only sounds. When the door swung open, the room fell silent. All eyes shifted toward the tall, striking woman who had just entered. She was impossibly beautiful, too perfect, almost as if she was sculpted from marble. Her long, dark hair cascaded down her back, and her violet eyes seemed to glimmer unnaturally in the dim light. Grace scanned the room with an unsettling calmness, her gaze lingering for just a moment too long on each person, as if weighing them, judging them. The chatter slowly resumed, but the air was thick with curiosity. Who was she? What was she doing here? A waitress with short blonde hair nervously approached her. "Can I help you?" she asked, trying to sound friendly, but her voice quivered under the weight of Grace's gaze. Grace smiled, a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Yes," she replied, her voice smooth like velvet. "I'm new in town. I'm looking for a place to stay." The waitress nodded quickly, eager to help, though she couldn't shake the strange feeling the woman gave her. "We got an inn just outside of town. It's quiet, peaceful. You like it?" Grace's smile widened, but there was something cold in it, something that made the waitress take an uneasy step back. "Thank you," she said, her voice a little quieter now. "I'm sure I will." With that, Grace turned on her heel and left the diner, her movements fluid and deliberate. As she walked out, a few heads turned to watch her go, but none of them spoke. They were all too mesmerized by her presence to voice their thoughts. No one knew who she was or where she had come from, but something about her felt off. Rachel Jennings, the young reporter from the Ridgebrook Gazette, had been sitting in the corner booth, scribbling notes for her latest article. She watched Grace leave the diner, her pen paused mid-sentence. Something about the woman caught her attention, her elegance, her beauty, the way she carried herself. It was as though she didn't belong in Ridgebrook, as though she were an intruder in a world that wasn't meant for her. Rachel shook her head, trying to push the thought aside. It wasn't unusual for newcomers to visit Ridgebrook, but Grace Wilder was different. There was an aura of mystery around her, something Rachel couldn't quite place. Still, she couldn't afford to get distracted. She had work to do, but as the night wore on, Rachel couldn't stop thinking about Grace. She found herself staring out the window of the diner, watching the empty streets. A soft breeze picked up, sending leaves skittering across the pavement. There was a sudden chill in the air, and Rachel shivered. Something was coming to Ridgebrook. Something big. And Grace Wilder was at the center of it. The next few days passed by in Ridgebrook with a strange sense of calm. Grace settled into her room at the inn, keeping mostly to herself. She would spend her days wandering the town, walking through the park, and occasionally stopping at the market. To the casual observer, she seemed perfectly normal, a beautiful woman, a stranger in a small town trying to find her place. But Rachel Jennings couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to her than met the eye. Rachel had kept an eye on Grace, always watching from a distance. She had seen the way Grace would walk through the park, her head held high, her eyes scanning the surroundings as if she were studying them rather than simply taking in the view. It was as though she were searching for something, or perhaps waiting for something. Every now and then, Rachel would catch a glimpse of Grace's face, and for a fleeting second, she could see something that wasn't quite right. It was subtle, like a crack in an otherwise flawless porcelain mask. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Rachel decided to follow her. It was a hunch, a feeling in her gut that told her something important was about to happen. She grabbed her coat and slipped out the back door of the diner, keeping to the shadows as she trailed Grace from a distance. The streets of Ridgebrook were quiet, and the sound of her boots echoed off the pavement as Rachel moved carefully, trying to stay out of sight. Grace didn't seem to notice she was being followed. She moved with purpose, her steps quick and determined. Rachel felt a thrill of fear mixed with excitement as she followed Grace through the winding streets, her heart pounding in her chest. It was getting darker, and the air had grown colder. The town, which usually felt so safe and peaceful, now seemed like a place that held secrets. Secrets that Rachel was determined to uncover. They reached the edge of town, where the woods began. Grace paused at the entrance of the forest, standing still for a long moment, as if listening for something. Rachel's breath caught in her throat. She was too far away to hear anything, but she could feel the tension in the air, as if something was about to happen. Then, without warning, Grace began to walk into the forest, her figure swallowed by the trees. Rachel hesitated for only a moment before following. She had to know what was going on. She had to understand what Grace was hiding. The forest was dark, the trees towering above her, casting long shadows on the ground. Rachel's footsteps were muffled by the thick carpet of fallen leaves, but she could still hear Grace ahead of her. The sound of her boots against the ground, the rustle of her clothing, everything felt heightened in the eerie silence of the woods. They reached a clearing, and Grace stopped again, standing in the middle of it, her back to Rachel. The air seemed to thrum with energy. Rachel felt her pulse quicken as she watched Grace raise her arms, as if calling to something, someone. It was then that the air itself seemed to change. A low, pulsing hum filled the space, barely audible at first, but growing louder with each passing second. And then Rachel saw it. Grace's skin rippled, as if something beneath it was moving, shifting. The subtle movement grew stronger, and Rachel's heart raced. Her eyes widened in disbelief. It wasn't just her imagination. Grace's skin was actually undulating. It was like something was pushing from inside, trying to break free. Rachel stepped back, her breath caught in her throat. She had to get closer. She had to see what was happening. But before she could take another step, Grace turned abruptly, her eyes locking with Rachel's. Those violet eyes, so intense and penetrating, caught her off guard. "You shouldn't be here," Grace said, her voice low and calm, almost too calm. She didn't sound angry, but there was a coldness to her words that sent a shiver down Rachel's spine. Rachel's mouth went dry, and she tried to speak, but no words came. The strange feeling in the pit of her stomach intensified. I had no, Rachel stammered, her voice barely a whisper. Grace's lips curved into a faint smile. "Curiosity can be dangerous," she said softly. "But you're not the first to follow me." Her gaze softened, though the warning in her voice remained. "You saw something, didn't you?" Something you're not meant to understand. Rachel nodded, unable to tear her eyes away from Grace. She wanted to ask what was happening, why Grace's skin was doing that, but she couldn't seem to form the words. Everything felt like it was happening in slow motion, like the world around her was distorting, and she was caught in the middle of it. Grace took a step toward her, the moonlight glinting off her flawless skin. "I'm not what you think I am," Grace whispered, her voice barely audible over the hum in the air. "But I can't tell you everything. Not yet." Rachel swallowed hard. The fear was undeniable now, but so was the curiosity. She had to know more. "Then what should I do?" Rachel finally managed to ask, her voice shaking. Grace looked at her for a long moment, as if weighing the decision in her mind. "For now," she said, her gaze hardening, "leave me be. Go back to town, forget what you saw, and walk away. If you don't, things will get worse for both of us." Rachel felt a knot tighten in her chest. She wanted to argue, to demand answers, but something in Grace's voice told her that she was not ready to hear the truth. "Go home, Rachel," Grace said one last time, her tone leaving no room for discussion. Reluctantly, Rachel turned and walked away, her mind racing with the images of what she had seen. What was Grace Wilder? And why did she feel like this was just the beginning of something far darker than she could ever imagine? Rachel couldn't stop thinking about what she had seen. Her mind replayed the images of Grace, her skin rippling like something alien beneath her human form. What had Grace been hiding? Was she really? Every time she tried to push the thoughts away, they came back stronger. The fear, the curiosity, it consumed her. The next day, Rachel found herself standing outside the diner once more, staring out the window as the morning fog lifted. She had no plan, no idea what she was doing, but there was a gnawing feeling in her gut that told her she couldn't ignore this anymore. She had to confront Grace. The bell above the door jingled as Grace entered the diner, her usual confident stride drawing the attention of every person in the room. The air seemed to grow colder, as if the temperature dropped just by her presence. Grace's violet eyes swept over the room, and for a moment, they lingered on Rachel. The intensity of that gaze was enough to make Rachel's breath catch in her throat. Grace walked toward her, her movements fluid, almost hypnotic. When she reached the table, she didn't sit immediately. Instead, she stood there, looking down at Rachel with those unnerving eyes. "You're still thinking about last night," Grace said, her voice low and smooth, like a melody that carried an underlying warning. Rachel swallowed hard, her palms sweaty. She tried to keep her composure, but the weight of Grace's gaze made her feel small. "I don't know what I saw," Rachel replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "But I can't stop thinking about it. I need answers, Grace. I can't just walk away from this." Grace's lips curled into a faint, knowing smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. She looked around the diner quickly, as if making sure no one else was listening, before finally taking a seat across from Rachel. The room, which had been filled with a low hum of conversations, suddenly felt too quiet. "I told you last night," Grace began, her voice steady. "You're not supposed to know what I am. But you saw it, didn't you? You saw beneath the skin." Rachel nodded, her heart pounding in her chest. "I saw something, yes. But it doesn't make sense. None of it does. Why are you here? What are you running from?" Grace leaned forward, her eyes darkening. "I'm not running from anything," she said, her voice low but tinged with an emotion Rachel couldn't quite place. "I've been sent here, Rachel. Sent to watch, to study. But it wasn't supposed to be like this. I wasn't supposed to feel anything." Rachel's confusion deepened. "Sent? By who?" Grace hesitated for a long moment, and when she spoke again, it was as if the weight of the truth had settled heavily on her shoulders. "I'm not from here. I'm not even from your world." The words hung in the air between them, heavy and chilling. Rachel felt a shiver run down her spine. "What do you mean? You're not human." Grace nodded, her gaze intense. "No, I'm not, but I'm as close to it as I can be. I've had to adapt, to blend in." I've been hiding in plain sight for years. But the truth is, there are others. And they're coming for me. Rachel's mind raced. Others? Who? Why? Grace's face softened for a moment. Her eyes filled with a strange mix of sadness and fear. They are, like me, but they're not like me in other ways. They are more dangerous, and they want me back. Rachel leaned forward, her curiosity piqued. What do you mean, dangerous? Grace took a deep breath, looking around the room before speaking again. They won't stop until they find me. They'll destroy anyone who gets in their way. They are relentless. Rachel felt the weight of Grace's words settle over her, and for the first time, she saw the true vulnerability in Grace's eyes. The alien woman wasn't the cold, unfeeling creature she had first imagined. She was running, terrified of what was coming, and Rachel, somehow, had been pulled into the center of it all. What do you need from me? Rachel asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Grace looked at her, her gaze softening slightly. I need you to help me. Help me hide. Help me stay one step ahead. You're the only one who knows the truth, Rachel. You're the only one I can trust. Rachel's heart raced. She wasn't sure what she was agreeing to, but she felt an undeniable pull to help Grace. I'll do whatever it takes, she said, the words leaving her lips before she could fully process what she had just promised. Grace smiled faintly, a small, almost sad smile. I knew I could count on you. The diner had become eerily quiet, the only sound the low clink of dishes being cleared in the back. Rachel's mind was reeling with everything Grace had said. The woman she had thought was just a stranger was so much more. And now Rachel was entangled in something far bigger than herself, something that could change everything she thought she knew about the world. The truth was out there, and Rachel had no choice but to face it head on. But even as she promised to help Grace, a nagging feeling remained at the back of her mind. The more she learned, the more dangerous this all seemed. And yet, something told her she couldn't turn back now. The days that followed felt like they were stretched thin, as if time itself was warping under the pressure of the secrets Grace had revealed. Rachel couldn't shake the unease that had settled in her chest. She had agreed to help Grace, but now that she was part of this strange, dangerous world, she wasn't sure if she was in over her head. The thought of Grace's words, "The others were coming," kept replaying in her mind, growing louder with each passing hour. What did that really mean? And what could Rachel possibly do to help? Grace had become a fixture in Rachel's life now. Every morning, they met at the diner, and after Rachel finished her shift, they would go for long walks through the town, talking in hushed tones about the dangers that lay ahead. Grace still hadn't revealed everything, but the more they talked, the clearer it became that the woman wasn't just running from her past. She was fighting a battle far bigger than herself. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the town seemed to grow quieter, Grace turned to Rachel with a serious expression. The air around them felt charged, as if something was about to happen. I need you to listen carefully, Grace said, her voice low but firm. The people I've been hiding from, they're coming closer. I can feel them. They have technology, ways of tracking me that you wouldn't believe. They will stop at nothing to find me. Rachel felt a knot form in her stomach. How do they track you? Are they like you? Grace's violet eyes darkened, the usual calm in her expression replaced by a flicker of something darker, something raw. No, they're not like me. I was sent here by a different group, a group that wanted to study humanity, understand it. But these other beings, they are ruthless. They have no interest in studying anything. They'll tear apart whatever gets in their way. Rachel swallowed hard, her pulse quickening. How do we stop them? How can I help? Grace took a deep breath, seeming to weigh her options before speaking. I need to hide, Rachel. I need you to help me disappear. If they find me, they will wipe out everything, everyone I care about. And you'll be caught in the middle. You've already seen too much. The gravity of Grace's words sank deep into Rachel's chest. You're asking me to hide you? But won't they find you anyway? You're not exactly someone you can hide in plain sight. Grace nodded, her eyes filled with a mix of determination and sorrow. I know, but it's the only chance we have. I've been running for so long. If I don't find a way to stay ahead of them, they'll track me down, and everything will be over. Rachel looked away for a moment, the weight of her decision pressing down on her shoulders. She wasn't sure she was ready for the responsibility that Grace was asking of her, but she couldn't turn her back now. Not after everything Grace had shared. Not after seeing the fear in her eyes. She had promised to help, and she wasn't going to back out now. "I'll help you," Rachel said finally, her voice steady despite the tremor of fear in her gut. "But how do we even begin? How do we make you disappear?" Grace's lips curved into a slight smile, but it was tinged with sadness. "There's a place, a remote location where I can stay hidden. It's isolated. No one will find me there. But getting there won't be easy. We have to be smart, Rachel. They are watching. They are always watching." Rachel nodded, trying to steel herself. She didn't fully understand what she was getting into, but she knew that helping Grace was the right thing to do. "Then let's get moving. We can figure out the rest as we go." Grace stood up, her movements deliberate, the air around her charged with a strange energy. "Pack what you need, Rachel. We leave tonight. There's no time to waste." Rachel felt her heart race. This was it. There was no turning back now. Whatever Grace was running from, whatever it was that made her so dangerous to these people, Rachel was now in the thick of it. She didn't know what would happen next, but she did know one thing. She couldn't walk away from this. As the night crept in, Rachel and Grace prepared to leave Ridgebrook behind. Rachel packed a small bag, her mind spinning with questions. What had she gotten herself into? And why did it feel like they were running from something that was too big for them to defeat? Outside, the night was silent, the only sound the whisper of the wind through the trees. The town of Ridgebrook, with its quiet streets and sleepy atmosphere, seemed so far removed from the dangers they were about to face. But Rachel couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning, that the real fight was yet to come. And as she locked the door behind her and turned to face Grace, she realized something that sent a chill down her spine. No matter where they went, no matter how far they ran, they would never truly escape the people Grace was hiding from. They were out there, and they were coming for her. The night was darker than Rachel expected. The dense woods surrounding Ridgebrook seemed to close in on her as she and Grace made their way down a narrow path, their footsteps muffled by the soft carpet of leaves. The air was thick with tension, and Rachel could feel it pressing against her chest. They had barely spoken since they left the inn, but she knew Grace was preparing for something big. The dread she felt was contagious, and it made Rachel's heart race. They reached the outskirts of town, where the dense forest seemed to stretch endlessly in front of them. The moon barely filtered through the canopy of trees, leaving them in a cloak of near-complete darkness. Grace stopped suddenly, holding her hand out in front of her. "Stay close," she whispered, her voice tight with urgency. "They're already here." Rachel froze, her breath catching her throat. She hadn't heard anything, but Grace's expression made it clear that they were not alone. She strained her ears, trying to listen, but the woods were eerily quiet. Too quiet. "Who's here?" Rachel whispered, her voice barely audible. "Others," Grace replied with a sharp, dangerous edge to her tone. "The ones I've been running from. They found us. They're closer than I thought." Rachel's blood ran cold as she turned her head, trying to spot any movement in the shadows. "What do we do?" she asked, panic creeping in her voice. Grace's eyes, glowing faintly under the moonlight, flicked back and forth across the dark forest. "We keep moving, no matter what." Before Rachel could respond, a faint rustling sound came from behind them. She whipped around, her heart pounding in her chest. But there was nothing, just a faint murmur of wind through the trees. Grace motioned for Rachel to follow her, her movements quick and fluid. "They're closing in," she muttered, "and we don't have much time." As they moved deeper into the forest, Rachel noticed that the air felt heavier, the woods almost closing in on them with each step. She could feel something watching them, the hairs on the back of her neck standing up. Her mind raced. What were these people, or whatever they were, and why was Grace so afraid of them? Why had they come after her? A loud, piercing sound sliced through the night air, sharp like metal scraping against metal. It was followed by a burst of movement, figures darting through the trees with unnatural speed. Rachel's heart skipped a beat. They were here. Grace grabbed Rachel's arm, pulling her into the underbrush just as one of the figures dashed past, too fast for Rachel to even see clearly. Her breath caught in her throat as she realized how much danger they were in. "They know we're here," Grace said, her voice trembling for the first time since Rachel had met her. "We're running out of time." Rachel's mind was spinning. She wanted to ask more questions, to understand what was happening, but there was no time. Grace was already pulling her along again, moving faster than Rachel thought was possible, her alien grace evident in every stride. They continued to run, ducking low to avoid the shadows that seemed to stretch after them. Grace moved with a purpose, never once faltering. But Rachel couldn't shake the feeling that they were being herded, that no matter how fast they ran, they couldn't escape the figures following them. The others. Suddenly, they came to a clearing, a break in the trees. Grace halted abruptly, her breath shallow. "They're here," she whispered, her voice tight with fear. "This is it." Rachel's pulse hammered in her ears as she turned to look around. The figures that had been chasing them emerged from the shadows, their bodies shifting unnaturally in the dim light. They were tall, with sleek, dark clothing that seemed to blend into the night. But it was their eyes that struck Rachel the most, pale, almost glowing, devoid of warmth. They weren't human. "They're like you," Rachel managed to choke out, her voice shaking with fear. Grace's face was a mask of grim determination. "No, there's something else. They're here to take me back. And if they can't, they'll destroy everything in their path." The figures stepped forward, their movements deliberate. Rachel wanted to run, to flee, but her legs felt like they were made of stone. Grace stepped between Rachel and the figures, her body tense. "I won't let you take me," she said, her voice rising in defiance. "You'll have to kill me first." One of the figures, a tall man with silver hair and cold eyes, stepped forward. "We don't want to kill you, Grace," he said, his voice smooth but chilling. "We just need you. It's for the greater good." Rachel's stomach twisted as she watched the exchange. This was no longer about Grace running from her past. It was about survival. Grace wasn't just being hunted. She was a prize, and these others weren't about to let her slip away. "We'll never stop," the man continued, his voice almost sad, as if he were trying to reason with her. "You know that. It's only a matter of time." Grace's gaze hardened. "I won't go back to you." Rachel stepped forward, suddenly understanding. Grace wasn't just trying to escape. She was fighting for something much bigger, something that if she lost, would affect not just her but the world. The others weren't just after Grace. They were after something else, something they couldn't afford to let go. "We'll see about that," the man said, his eyes narrowing. And with that, he signaled to the others, and the hunt began anew. The forest was thick with shadows as Grace and Rachel ran deeper into the trees. Every footstep felt like a drumbeat, echoing through the dense underbrush. Rachel's lungs burned from the exertion, but there was no time to stop, no time to catch her breath. The others were right behind them, their pursuit relentless. The sound of their footsteps had stopped, but Rachel knew better than to think they had given up. The figures were out there, somewhere in the darkness, waiting for the right moment to strike. "Grace!" Rachel gasped, her voice ragged with fear. "What are we going to do? They're not stopping." Grace didn't answer at first. She was too focused, her eyes scanning the trees ahead, every nerve on high alert. She was running faster now, more desperate, her form blurring as she pushed herself harder. "We need to make it to the clearing," Grace said, her voice tight with strain. "It's our only chance." Rachel didn't need to ask what would happen if they didn't make it. She already knew. Grace wasn't just running to survive. She was running to protect something much bigger than herself. "How close are they?" Rachel asked, trying to keep up, her heart racing. "Close enough," Grace replied. "They can feel me. They'll catch up soon, but if we get to the clearing, we have a chance to fight back. At least, it's better than being caught in the woods with no escape." Rachel's stomach twisted. She had no idea what Grace meant by fighting back, but she could feel the fear building inside her, threatening to overtake her every step of the way. The deep, pulsing fear that seemed to vibrate through the very air. "Can't we just hide?" Rachel asked, but even as the words left her mouth, she knew it was too late for that. Grace shook her head without breaking stride. "Hiding won't stop them. They have ways of tracking me. We have to keep moving." Rachel didn't know how much longer she could keep up. Her legs were burning, and the weight of the situation was starting to press down on her like a vice. The trees seemed to be closing in around them, the darkness growing thicker with each passing moment. She could barely make out Grace's figure ahead, just a shadow in the night. Then suddenly Grace stopped. Rachel collided with her, nearly knocking them both off balance. "Get down," Grace hissed, pulling Rachel to the ground just as a shape emerged from the trees. One of the figures. They were standing at the edge of the clearing now, tall and imposing, their movements graceful yet menacing. They were waiting for them, closing in. Rachel's breath caught in her throat as she saw their glowing eyes in the dark, their cold stares locked on her and Grace. "We don't want to hurt you," one of the figures said, his voice smooth but chilling. "We just want to take her with us." Grace's eyes flashed with an icy fury as she rose to her feet, pulling Rachel up with her. "You'll have to kill me first." The figure smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "We're past that, Grace. You know what happens when you defy us." Rachel's heart pounded in her chest, her mind reeling. She had no idea who these people were, but there was something terrifying about the way they spoke, like they knew Grace, like they had a history together. And it wasn't a friendly one. "I'm not going back," Grace said, her voice low and full of finality. "You'll have to kill me before you get to her." The figure stepped forward, his movements slow and deliberate. "We don't want it to come to that." Grace's eyes narrowed. "Then leave us alone." For a long moment, the forest was silent, the only sound the wind rustling through the leaves. Then, without warning, the figure lunged forward, his movements impossibly fast. Grace barely had time to react before she shoved Rachel aside, ducking out of the way just in time. Rachel stumbled, her heart racing as she tried to regain her balance. She had to do something, anything, because Grace wasn't going to be able to hold them off forever. She couldn't just stand there and watch. Before she could make a move, she saw Grace twist and strike, her body a blur of motion. There was a flash of something silver in her hand, and then the figure was on the ground, his eyes wide with shock. Grace stood over him, her expression fierce, but there was no time to savor the victory. The others were still coming, and they were just as deadly. "We need to go," Grace said, her voice urgent. "Now." Rachel didn't need any more convincing. She ran alongside Grace as they moved through the clearing, weaving between the trees, their footsteps frantic. The sounds of the others chasing them rang in her ears, but Grace didn't falter. She moved like a force of nature, untouchable and relentless. They ran and ran, the clearing slipping further behind them with every step. The figures were still out there, but Rachel didn't dare look back. She focused only on the dark silhouette of Grace in front of her, and the faint hope that they might make it out of this alive. Just as the sounds of pursuit started to fade, Grace slowed. Rachel caught up with her, gasping for air, her legs aching. "We lost them, didn't we?" Grace looked at her, her eyes hard. "Not yet, but we're not safe. Not until we're far away from here." Rachel didn't know what that meant, but the dread in Grace's voice told her everything she needed to know. They weren't out of danger. Not by a long shot. The night was far from over. The deep shadows of the forest had swallowed Rachel and Grace whole, and yet the threat still loomed close, never fully leaving. They had managed to lose the figures in the woods for now, but Rachel knew the danger wasn't gone. Grace had made it clear that running was only a temporary solution, a reprieve before the storm. They had kept moving for hours, winding through the trees, only stopping when they were sure they were no longer being followed. But even now, standing in a small, secluded grove with the faint light of dawn creeping through the branches, Rachel felt the weight of what had just happened. The figure that had fallen, the others who were still out there, hunting them. It was all too much to process, but the one thing Rachel knew for sure was that this wasn't just some random chase. This was a battle for something far more important than Grace's safety. It was a battle that would affect everything. Grace leaned against a tree, her expression weary, but there was no sign of surrender in her eyes. She was still that unshakable force, her will a rock in the storm. Rachel approached slowly, unsure of what to say. The silence between them was thick with the unspoken truth. "What happens now?" Rachel asked, her voice almost too quiet, as if speaking too loudly might shatter whatever fragile peace they had found. Grace turned to face her, her violet eyes sharp. "Now, we move forward. We keep running. But where?" Rachel's question was laced with both confusion and fear. "Where do we go? I can't just keep running forever, Grace. You said you were sent here for a reason, but I still don't understand why they're after you. What is it that they want?" Grace's gaze softened for a brief moment, and she sighed deeply. "I was sent here to study, to observe. My people, they have a way of learning about others, about different worlds. But I wasn't just a researcher, Rachel. I was chosen for something more." Rachel swallowed hard, the tension in her chest growing. "Chosen for what?" "There's a power inside me, a gift," Grace said, her voice barely above a whisper, almost like she was revealing a secret even to herself. "It's something my people discovered long ago, something that has the potential to change everything. But the others, they want it. They'll do anything to get their hands on it. If they do, it could be catastrophic." Rachel's head spun. The pieces of the puzzle were falling into place, but there were too many pieces, and she couldn't make sense of the picture. "I don't understand," Rachel said, the frustration evident in her voice. "What do you mean by catastrophic? What are they going to do with your gift?" Grace's expression grew hard again, her voice steady despite the gravity of her words. "They're not interested in using it for good. They never were. They want to harness it, control it. And if they succeed, they'll be able to manipulate entire worlds, entire civilizations. They'll bend everything to their will." Rachel felt a chill crawl up her spine. "And you're the only one who can stop them?" "I'm the only one who has the power to fight back," Grace said. "But even I can't do it alone. That's why you're here, Rachel." Rachel blinked, taken aback. "Me? I don't have any powers, Grace. I'm just a reporter." Grace shook her head, her eyes intense. "You might not see it yet, but you're stronger than you realize. You've already proven that by helping me, by standing by me when you had every reason to turn away. You have something inside of you, too. Something they never expected." Rachel's breath caught in her throat. "What do you mean?" Grace stepped closer, lowering her voice to a near whisper. "There's more to you than meets the eye. Your connection to me, it's no accident. The more you learn, the more you'll understand. But for now, we have to stay one step ahead of them." Rachel's mind raced. She wasn't sure what Grace meant, but the weight of her words felt like a spark in the dark. Could it be true? Was there something special about her? Something that could make a difference? The sound of rustling leaves snapped Rachel out of her thoughts. Grace immediately tensed, her posture alert. She reached out and pulled Rachel behind the large tree, signaling for silence. Rachel's heart hammered in her chest as she pressed herself against the bark, trying to keep as still as possible. "They're here," Grace whispered, her voice low but urgent. Rachel's breath hitched. The figures had found them. They were closing in. Grace's eyes scanned the surroundings, her body taut with readiness. "This is it. We need to fight, Rachel. It's now or never." Rachel's throat was dry. She didn't know if she was ready for this, if she was ready to fight. She had never been in a situation like this before, never faced something so terrifying, so beyond anything she could understand. But she knew one thing. She couldn't run anymore. Not this time. Okay, Rachel said, her voice shaking but determined. What do we do? Grace's lips curved into a thin, determined smile. We fight. Together. The sounds of footsteps grew louder. They were close. And Rachel knew, with every fiber of her being, that this was the moment where everything would change. As the figures emerged from the shadows, Rachel and Grace stood side by side, ready to face whatever came next. The fate of the world, of everything, was in their hands, and they would fight no matter what. Here is the story ends. If you enjoyed and want to watch more thrilling sci-fi adventures, make sure to subscribe to the channel. Dive into epic battles, explore distant galaxies, and join brave heroes as they fight for survival against impossible odds. Let us know in comments if you want next chapters to publish soon. Hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and become part of the journey. Together, we'll keep the last light burning. Subscribe now and let the adventure continue.